Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all could hear me. Welcome to the afternoon session for our Faculty Development Day. My name is Cherie Boyer. I'm a professor of pediatrics in the Division of Adolescent Medicine, and I'm a long-term member of the Faculty Development Day Planning Committee. And I have the pleasure and the honor of serving as the moderator or the facilitator for this afternoon session of our distinguished chairs. As you can see from this title slide, the title of this session is Tips for Faculty Success from our department chairs. We have a distinguished panel of chairs. Dr. Barber. Dr. Barber is a professor in the Leland A. and Gladys K. Barber Endowed Chair for the Department of Cell and Tissue Biology in the School of Dentistry. Dr. Bibbins-Domingo is professor and chair of the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics and the Lee Goldman Endowed Professor of Medicine. She's also the inaugural Vice Dean for Population Health and Health Inequity in the School of Medicine. Dr. Chen is a professor and vice chair for the Academic Personnel and Department of Healthcare Nursing in the School of Nursing. Dr. Hirsch is a W.H. Marie Wattis Distinguished Professor and the chair of the Department of Pediatrics in the School of Medicine. He's also the physician in chief of the Benioff Children's Hospitals. Dr. Kroon is the Thomas A. Oliver Professor and the Department of Clinical, Chair of Clinic. She's a professor and the chair of Clinical Pharmacy in the School of Pharmacy. She's also the Assistant Chief Pharmacy Officer for Research, Education, and Clinical Services for the UCSF Health. So please join me in welcoming our panel. So I'd like to place this particular discussion, this unique discussion we have this afternoon in context of the entire day. So for this workshop, we would like you as chairs to complement the information that our participants received earlier today regarding faculty compensation and advancement and promotion. So it is our hope that from your perspective as department chairs, you'll be able to provide participants with specific and concrete tips and tools they'll be able to use when experiencing various and unanticipated issues that they may encounter that may impede their ability to accomplish their goals for promotion and advancement or fulfill their roles and responsibilities. So with that as a backdrop, we're going to begin, but I also want to add that we have 3 sources of questions today. Again, this is a panel discussion, unlike earlier today where there were formal presentations. There will be no formal presentation for this session. We will use case-based vignettes to describe typical concerns that faculty may encounter. We will use questions that were submitted by faculty during registration, so they were submitted to us in advance. And also we'll have real-time questions that will be coming in. And feel free to add your questions in a Q&A, and those will be forwarded to me and we will integrate those in. So with that in mind, we will get started. I'm going to stop sharing now because it would be great to see everyone in the gallery view. Thank you, everyone. And again, welcome. So I'll start. I'm going to start with a question that was submitted to us in advance. And this question is focused on building a relationship with chairs. This faculty wanted to know, and I think many of our junior faculty want to know, how can they build a relationship with chairs? And this question was asked, as a junior faculty, how do I build a relationship with my department heads, which seems so unreachable? It seems like we must go through our senior colleagues or mentors to communicate with them. So can you speak to that and how you can encourage a relationship and communication with your faculty, particularly those who are in early stage of their career? Feel free to anyone to jump in.
Sherry, this is Diane. I don't know if it's just me, but you're cutting out.
Am I?
Was it only me or did other people?
I didn't have an issue, so it may be you, Diane.
Sorry.
Okay, I'll do my best to.
No, it might be my system. I don't know.
Okay. Well, let's hope for the best. So back to our question, how might you encourage your early career faculty to reach out to you, to have access to you as their chair?
So Sheree, maybe I'll start with my thoughts.
Thank you.
And I don't know if the other chairs share my views or not, but I think I love it when faculty, especially junior faculty, come and talk to me. I really enjoy that, and I think I would recommend that all of you have no hesitation to contact your chair whenever you want to have a chance to talk to the chair, because I think it's one of my favorite things to get to do. I've made an effort to reach out to all of the members of my faculty to have one-on-one meetings with them, but I have over 300 faculty, so it takes a while for me to sometimes get through that list. But those who've approached me on their own, it's been great. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I tell new faculty that they should schedule a meeting with their chair. They're new faculty in the department. They should definitely meet the chair of the department. That should happen. I have 85 faculty in my department, so not as big as Dr. Hirsch's, but definitely new faculty. We're in a time of a pandemic where people are remote. So if you are new on the faculty in the last year, I think it's been particularly isolating, right? Because you don't have those normal ways you meet people and talk. So it is absolutely, to me, expected. If you're new, you should make an appointment with the chair. And just to say, I'm a new faculty, I want you to know me. I also think that it's important for people to, I love it when I get email that somebody tells me that they got a new grant or that they published a paper that they're particularly proud of. And I think a lot of people think that this is too much of blowing your own horn, or some people don't think that that's something that's there. I find as a chair, it is not easy for me to know everything that's going on in my department. And it is absolutely fair game for faculty to tell me what's going on in their department. And especially when it's good news, that's something I always want to know about. And
so what I'm hearing is that you're encouraging them to reach out to you directly. They don't have to go through their division chief or their mentors to reach out to you. They can do that directly. Is that consensus?
Yes, and I would just add to that, a lot of times, for whatever reason, people feel like they can't even reach out to me directly. They have to contact my assistant. And they don't really. They can email me and say, hey, I'd like to have a chance. Is there a time when we can get together? I'd like to chat about something. And then I'll make sure my assistant puts that on the calendar.
Yeah, I would just add, I completely echo what others have said. It's really part of our role as a chair to be accessible to all of our faculty. And so we expect to meet one-on-one with all faculty, especially some of the more junior faculty. I actually set up quarterly one-on-ones with my junior faculty. I have fewer faculty in my department than others on this panel, but it is a way for me just to check in separately from what a mentor might be doing, because as chair, I may be able to provide some sponsorship opportunities that perhaps a career mentor may not be aware of.
Yeah. So I think
this is Diane. So cell and tissue biology is a little bit different than the larger departments. We're quite small. We're only 15 faculty, which is very conducive to easy and frequent communication between the chair and not only junior faculty, but faculty at all ranks. We have quarterly faculty meetings in which there's a good exchange, but everyone knows that I have an open door policy and encourage faculty to talk with me either one-on-one, through Zoom meetings, through email exchanges. But it's a lot more conducive within a small department like ours.
Yes. Dr. Chen?
Yeah, I totally agree with everyone that before the pandemic that I have the open door policy, but now I have open Zoom door policy. I think I really encourage everyone to reach out to your department chair, because it's a two-way street, right? Not only we understand more about you, you understand more about us and how we can work together as a team. For me, it's a teamwork together to make sure you can thrive in the system and to make sure that we are helping you to be able to make all the milestones.
Thank
One
you.
thing, this is Diane, one thing I wanted to, that everyone is saying though, is that the junior faculty needs to be a pro advocate and speak up and communicate with the chair. And I know that this sometimes is hard for junior faculty, especially in a large department that's part of even maybe a larger division. But being your own self-advocate is really critical.
Thank you. Yes, I think that it's been a resounding encouragement of reaching out and being proactive. So I hope that our faculty participants are hearing that loud and clear. I'm going to move on to another type of question or issue that is well known at our university, and it has to do with funding shortage. And I'm going to convey this through a brief vignette. So we have Faculty X. Faculty X is an associate professor, step 2, with an in-resident series appointment. She has been successful and productive in prior years with a high level of scholarly and creative productivity, including a strong program of research with publications and grant funding, exceptional teaching record, consistent academic, Senate, and department service at a high level. However, over the last 2 years, she's had difficulty covering her salary through grants. The COVID-19 pandemic and the shelter-in-place regulations have further had a negative impact on her research program and productivity, and she and her partner, also a UCSF faculty member, became the primary daytime caregivers for their 6 and 9-year-old children, as well as an elderly parent. In addition, local regulations required that her lab have very limited operations for close to a year. She's committed to staying at UCSF and would like to remain in academic medicine, but she's now worried about job security and wishes to discuss this with her chair. I have a twofold question for you to think about and to tell our participants about. So from your perspective, what could Faculty X do before coming to you as the chair? And secondly, what specific tools or advice would you give her to help her move forward with these concerns? I know that was a bit of a long scenario, but I think we get the picture of funding shortages and concerns, and the COVID pandemic problems laid on top of this is concerning, and there's concern about job security. Who would like to start with that?
Go ahead.
I can jump in. So what should this person do first? One thing we realized during the pandemic, of course, is that many people were having that experience, and we were at a time when we were very isolated. And I think one of the best things that happened on our faculty was people started to share with each other the things that were happening, both the challenges that their concerns about productivity, the challenges of balancing the disruption in our home lives with what was disruption in our academic lives. And a lot of times, I think you're going to hear this as a recurring theme, I'm going to guess, on these panels. A lot of times junior faculty in particular sort of keep things to themselves. And that's sort of in some ways, the worst thing that can happen during this time. One of the things we realized in our department when we realized how disruptive things were for faculty was we found ways, without thinking through the individual faculty needs, of the ways that the department could both shift our resources to make certain types of things easier. We increased the administrative support that people needed because grant writing was a big thing. And we made a lot of collective decisions because we realized that everyone was having very similar problems that we could solve in a collective way. So one of the things that I would really encourage people to do is to find those people that they can share the information with, whether that's a division chief or another colleague, because that's the way that departments can do collective problem solving as well as individual problem solving. It's also the way that department chairs, so my dean is Dean Talmadge King. Dean King calls chairs glorified middle managers. So just in case you think that there's any glory in this title, the other thing that department chairs do is that we advocate with the deans and the school leadership about concerns of the faculty. And so the worst thing that faculty can do is not let other people know what's going on.
Thank you, Dr. Bibbins-Domingo.
This is Diane.
Mhm.
So I'll address your two questions, Sherry. One was in terms of being prepared to go to the chair. I think obviously some sort of documentation of the performance, publications, funding history, recent submitted grant applications, that's critical. As well as concrete ideas to present the chair on what is needed, what that faculty needs. In terms of specific tools or advice, there's a number. First of all, as Kirsten mentioned resources. So the CTB requires all junior faculty to have two designated mentors. One is scientific and one is career. And in this case, I would want to make sure that this particular faculty has indeed been interacting with their scientific mentor. And also related to what Kirsten said, you know, we all talk about mentoring, but longitudinal mentoring and vertical mentoring are two very different things. And I think it's important to incorporate both. As Kirsten said, mentoring within a peer group is also important. But in terms of really addressing issues, if one of the issues is a recent lapse of funding, then a big focus should be on trying to improve that that problem, which includes, you know, has the person discussed with their scientific mentor? Has the scientific mentor talked to them about their specific aims? And another thing that our department does with junior faculty is before they submit a major grant, they're asked to do a chalk talk to a group, not only a group that is intimately knowledgeable about their topic, but maybe not knowledgeable. And it's a really good way to air and present aims and get feedback.
Thank you.
So those are things. And then the third thing is, obviously, there are a lot of intramural funding resources that faculty need to be aware of, whether they be a whole slew of different RAPs. There's PBBRs. There's a lot of intramural support, funding support that we would hope junior faculty are aware of.
Thank you, Dr. Barber. Dr. Kroon, Dr. Hirsch, or Dr. Chen, is there any
Sure, I'll just,
you'd like to
add a couple points. Thanks, Sherry, so much. I guess this should be obvious, is just as a PI is to be on top of your budget. I've had faculty who somehow don't seem to know how much is left, and by meeting with our finance manager, they were able to kind of stretch out the budget to help with some coverage. So just to really always be on top of that as a PI, it is ultimately the PI's responsibility, not necessarily your finance manager in the department. Similar to Diane, we will hold mock study reviews. I financially support that for 3 or 4 or 5 peers outside of your usual peer group to really dissect the resubmission of an NIH grant, for example, and always prepping time to do that so that you could actually incorporate the suggestions that the mock study reviewers might have. And then just always to keep the communication lines open and reach out to your chair if you're anticipating perhaps a shortfall versus waiting until the last minute. That's always super helpful as a chair when we've got time to plan. Maybe there's bridge funding application that could be submitted, those types of things.
Thank you.
So I actually echo everybody's recommendation, but I also, from my experience as a chair in the School of Nursing, predominantly we are female colleague, I work with lots of female colleagues. As you can see, the caregiving responsibility, what I heard, not just lack of productivity, but also the stress level that this faculty may be experiencing because the young children and the aging parents. So I think I want to focus on the productivity, but I also want to be realistically checking with the faculty. I think it's hard to have a balance. I don't even know we can use the term balance at all, work-life balance. But from my perspective, I would like to check in with the faculty. And I think you need this, I would love faculty to be honestly, ask yourself, how you spend your time. It is okay now at this time to spend with your family because we are in pandemic and we will work together to figure it out. The rep grant, other resource, or childcare resource to help support the faculty. I think I would love to have the faculty think about not the barrier to success, but what are the issues that is upfront and the center. It may not be you don't know how to write a grant, it's you don't have time to write a grant. Mm-hmm. So I think I will be mindful and want to work with the faculty about what are the situations, including their life.
Thank you so much. Dr. Hirsch, do you want to add anything to what we've heard already?
Well, I think what everybody said, I agree with. Maybe I would add one other perspective. This issue, this vignette actually is not uncommon. It's been exacerbated by the pandemic, but it's a situation that faculty find themselves in. And I think the approach differs if you're talking about a senior, well-established faculty versus a young faculty early in their career, which is what I think we're focused on today. And I would echo the comment that was made about the real importance of, number one, having a very well-established mentor group, a primary research mentor, and a mentor committee. And to be very proactive, as was stated, don't wait until there's a pending crisis of funding or a gap, but to be meeting with your committee on a regular basis. And I urge my faculty in my department to have every 6 months meeting of their mentorship committee, so that issues of productivity, potential funding gaps, those things are noted early on and can be then more easily addressed. Sometimes what happens is faculty don't have that structure in place, and so they're not getting the feedback frequently enough in terms of how their career is going and are they hitting the right milestones. So then when suddenly it becomes, my funding's running out in 6 months, it becomes much more difficult to address the issues.
Thank you all. I've heard excellent suggestions and very concrete tips, but first acknowledging the stress and acknowledging the role the pandemic has overlaid these concerns for our faculty, but also the notion and importance of mentoring that's been stated multiple times. And the other thing is you're not alone in this, so make sure others know about what you're going through and try to be proactive as soon as possible. And the other thing that came through loud and clear to me was the notion of there are opportunities for intramural funding, bridge funding, other resources that are available, and there have been lots of other tips. So I think that covers a lot of what we were looking for in terms of helping faculty who are in this position to think about such things. I'm going to switch to another question that was submitted in advance to us, and it has to do with collaboration. And this faculty wanted to know, what are the best ways to find research partnerships for clinical professors? So the first one was focused on research. Now, this professor is a clinician primarily, but want to engage in research. How might this particular or other faculty who are clinicians who seeking support and mentoring from researchers?
This is Diane. First of all, is participate in different forums in which people present what they're doing. For example, if you're a member of the Cancer Center, there are monthly seminars that are given by UCSF faculty. And there are websites available. And there are a lot of different forums depending on the discipline, like if you're involved in immuno-X or something like that. And here again comes to the proactive, be a self-advocate. If there is someone who is doing discovery that's related to either what you're doing or what you're interested or a new direction, then contact that person. And then there's the networking. Use networking.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that one of the best things that we have on our campus is that we have so many different seminars or discussion groups or sort of research groups or things that are happening that are generally open, and people, that's the best way to sort of jump into another network on campus that you might be working in clinically to find out the types of research that are happening on campus. And I would guess, like, if you're an oncologist, there might be several types of different networks, whether you're looking at the basic sciences or the clinical sciences or implementation sciences. There's a whole range of ways in which to get involved in research. And I think that I think being involved in those networks is going to be helpful. Especially because as a clinician, oftentimes you do have something that you yourself can contribute to those networks, whether it is enrollment of patients or it is in helping people who want to understand, the clinical disease presentations and are writing grants around that. There are lots of ways in which I think clinicians are involved as a part of research teams if they are not themselves driving the research. And but I think the best way to start is to intersect with those other networks on campus who are doing the research.
Absolutely.
This is Diane. I also wanted to add that you are at one of the most incredible institutions in terms of breadth. I mean, it's almost whatever you want is here. It's and I'll just very briefly, 15 years ago, I gave a research symposium to a cell signaling group that I belong to, and I just presented ideas. And someone in the group said, "Oh, have you talked to so-and-so?" And I said, "No." So I went and talked to so-and-so, and that person wasn't particularly interested in my idea, and they said, "Go talk to so-and-so." And then by the third so-and-so, I established a collaboration with someone that it's been now 15 years. We've published 11 papers together. It was just incredible. I didn't even know this person existed or was doing the kind of work they were doing. So you are at the most incredible institution for that kind of breadth and depth. So take full advantage of it.
Great suggestion. Anything else, Dr. Chen, do you want to say?
Yeah, I was thinking about, of course, your department chair is always a resource. Sometimes we know other network, other people we can reach out to, but also think about your peers who are scientists that you may learn a lot from them. So I think reach out to your peers, and your department chair will be other resource too.
Maybe I would just add one other thought, Cherie. I think sometimes for a clinician who wants to get involved in research, it sometimes can be hard to know even where to start. And I think a good starting point is to decide what area are you interested in maybe getting involved in. And I have a really great example of a young faculty that was in my department who was a pediatric endocrinologist and got interested in pancreatitis in diabetes. And she had never done any research before, but she was really interested in this topic. And she went and met with some of the people on campus who were studying pancreatitis. and basically just said, hey, is there anything I can do to help? I'm interested, and I see patients with diabetes in my clinic. Maybe there's some things that I can provide, some help, some patients, some samples, and that led over the course of a few years to her reaching the point where she was about 50% NIH funded by being co-investigators on other people's grants. And she's become a very successful researcher now doing collaborative science.
Great example. Okay. So I just want to take a second to remind our participants that you're free to ask questions. You could put those in a Q&A, and those will be forwarded to us. It's a wonderful opportunity to pick the brain, so to speak, of our chairs who have lots of knowledge, experience, and wisdom to share. So please don't be shy about putting forth your questions. We have time to address them. So don't forget to do that. But in the meantime, I'm going to go to another question that has to do with securing protected time. So this was asked again in advance. What are some ways to secure protected time given several competing demands? For example, departmental push for more clinical time with more personal interest in having protected time to grow research and engage in service. So again, we know that that could be challenging, particularly as faculty, because we have multiple interests and sometimes it feels like they're competing with one another. So what suggestions might you offer, or from your own experiences, and what might you share with young early career faculty in that regard? Dr. Kroon, can I ask you to start?
Absolutely.
Just to hear what you're thinking around that?
Sure. I actually, one of these vignettes I wrote down, they need protected time. So it was getting assigned some new QI program. But it's a challenge. And as a junior faculty, this is often your time to kind of show what you can contribute to. And I know when I was junior faculty 25 years ago, I probably was doing more than I should be. Some of my junior faculty now seem to be better at saying no than I was. But it's just really having that discussion, looking at what is all on your plate, what opportunities that you want to seek, that maybe some kind of stretch assignments that you can really grow. But then, being realistic that you have, I'm going to say, especially faculty who have children at home or caring for elders, we know as chairs that you may not have that extra, time to be able to stretch a bit. What's helpful often is, maybe other departments have ideas of how, if faculty members being asked to coordinate a new course, but also serve on a new committee. How could you kind of balance that out a bit? I recently had one of my junior faculty, I needed her to coordinate a course in our curriculum. And fortunately, she agreed to, but then unbeknownst to me, she reached out to another faculty to say, hey, will you kind of co-teach this with me? And I thought, wow, I love that. You solved the problem on your own. You didn't have to come to me. So you solve it amongst yourselves, and they decided how to kind of make it more of a balanced teaching demand. So I don't have a great answer, but it is a lot about juggling, and sometimes things flex up, flex down, depending on the time of the year.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Some advice that I generally give people I mentor in this area is that I think some of when I've seen challenges happen within a mentoring relationship, it's because an early career faculty has an idea of what their goals are, and they haven't communicated their goals well with the people who are mentoring or advising them, or there's a disconnect between those goals. So if you're a faculty member who started with a high clinical load, but you aspire to be a researcher, you need some protected time to develop your research portfolio. if your mentor or your division chief or your department chair doesn't know that you actually aspire to a research portfolio, they don't have it in their mind that you need protected time in order to develop that. And so the only way, it sometimes, I think early career people, faculty don't want to share what their goals are because they're worried that it doesn't align. The only way to know if it aligns or doesn't align is to actually share it. And that is the way people can help you to think about protecting your time. Even though sometimes you might find that you're in a situation where you're disappointed that what you want isn't what somebody else is able to give, it's still more important to be able to share, at least with your mentor, what your goals are. That is the only way that we can all figure out how to do those things that will actually help you. So that would be my first advice. The second advice is when you meet with mentors or your division chief or whoever the person is that sort of advances your promotions or whatever, you should actually be prepared to share all the things that you're doing. You shouldn't expect that somebody knows all the things that you're doing. And when somebody asks you to do something new, you should have that list to say, well, that would be great. I would love to help you with that, but help me to figure out what of these other things have to come off this list because these are the things that I'm doing. And there's no way for anyone in a position to know all of the things that the people around them that are doing. And you, as an early career faculty, and any time as a faculty, it's your job to be able to advocate for yourself and the sets of things that you're doing to ask for what you want. And then the last thing that I know you probably spent some part of this day talking through our incredibly complex series that we have at the university and what series people are in. I think when there's the biggest problem is if there's a mismatch between the expectation in the series and what a person wants to be doing. And that's the thing that argues most for getting people to move towards the series that matches their goals and accomplishments and what they're able to do. And I will tell you, even early on in my career, when I was asked to do more clinical time, and I talked with my division chief and I said, I'm new in the in-residence series, and I have to meet the criteria for the in-residence series. And I would like to do more clinical time. I like being a clinician, but I am not going to meet the criteria for my series with this clinical load that that you've asked me to do, especially because at that time in our clinical environment, we had the lowest person on the totem pole, which I was, had an ever expanding panel of patients. And so I think in some ways, the alignment of the clinical series with what you want actually can help you in these types of environments to be able to protect your time.
Thank you, Dr. Bibbins-Domingo. That's a solid advice. We've had some questions. I'm going to move to a couple of questions that's come in from our participants now, and it has to do with negotiations, salary, and balance. That's always going to come up in these settings. And I'll start with one question that's on the table. So, and I know this will vary from department to department, school to school, but if we could kind of give our participants some sense about it. Are there standards to startup packages?
I can speak from the basic science department that we have tried. I think, correct me, I may be wrong. There's 8 or 9 basic science departments across the schools. I don't think nursing has a basic science department, but pharmacy has 2, dentistry has 1, and medicine has 7 or 8 or whatever. As chairs of basic science departments, we meet, I think, bi-monthly, and we've tried to establish sort of a standard startup package, but a lot of time that goes by the wayside if there's a particular candidate that a department's trying to recruit. And if they can secure additional resources, then it's often goes above that. But the standard, at least for the basic science departments, is about 1.2 million for a startup package, roughly.
Well, Dr. Chen, what about the School of Nursing? What are some of the standards there?
So Diana, thank you for sharing the number. I was like a little, wow, I wish I can offer my faculty that way.
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
But you know,
here.
our bread and butter is research, so we have to invest in that.
Right. Of course. School nursing, we negotiate with the dean's office, right? We put the package together. It really depends on the rank of series of the candidate we try to bring in, and if they're funded, they bring along. So we also offer protected time as part of the package. So it's very hard for me to tell you like specific, like the number of financial incentive. Well, we sort of look at the 3 year as a package or 4 year as a package, that how we can bring faculty at different level to be with us.
So Dr. Hirsch and Dr. Bibbins-Domingo, you're both in School of Medicine, and I know different departments. Again, I think they're asking more about standards. Are there standards, or should they know something that they should be advocating for that perhaps they didn't know about? I guess that's behind that question. Any insight you could share from the School of Medicine vantage point?
I mean, I would just say that I think that these would be very department specific, right? So I wouldn't say that there are standards across Dr. Hirsch's department and mine. I do think there is both. So can only speak now for my department. I think we do try to apply standards and to think about equity across. It's not helpful for our department to have real outliers in terms of salary, in terms of the size of startup packages and those types of things. I do think that it always helps people to ask for what they think that they want, because then you can get into discussions over what's possible, what are the ways in which you accomplish these goals. So I do think that people should ask for what they want, because there's nothing wrong with asking. That is a generally good principle of negotiation. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And I do also think that if you learn that there are things that do not appear equitable within your department, you should ask someone about that, right? Because you might find that there are well-founded reasons, or you might find that nobody knew that there was, we're sort of we're a large, complex organization, and sometimes things happen that people learn that are, that happened in one way a few years ago and happen differently now. And those are the types of things that should be discussed. And I think, at least I would say in medicine, there's a move to more transparency and more so that we can really understand, how we arrived at the different packages that get set up.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, when I was talking, I was referring to the basic sciences, which, research and fundamental research is our bread and butter. So startups really try to make an investment in someone kickstarting their research program. Yeah. But I would say across the different departments in the School of Dentistry, one thing that is common is 3 years of salary support. And I don't know, the other chairs can speak to that.
But Kroon, what about pharmacy, where it's heavily clinically based? Are there
as Diane mentioned, we have 2 basic science departments in the School of Pharmacy. We only have 3 departments. So my department is clinical pharmacy. And I actually have all the different faculty series in the department. So I have health sciences, clinical, clinics, adjunct, in residence, and ladder rank. And so it's a very diverse department from that perspective, and really it depends on the individual. Clinical faculty will have different types of startup versus ladder rank in residence. So it just depends on the series and then the expectations of that hire. So even in the clinics, I have 4 or 5 PharmD PhD. So they're pharmacist scientists. So they're being hired with expectations for NIH and funding their salaries. So that's even in the clinic. So we just have that individual conversation.
Thank you. I'm going to switch. There are several other questions around negotiating and best time for negotiating salaries. I'll just start with you, Dr. Hirsch, if you could speak to the issue of how does one ask the chair for a raise, and is there a better time to do that than others? If you could talk about from your vantage point. Issues around.
Well, in my department, we follow benchmarks, and we try to follow benchmarks as closely as possible, because compensation can be such a sensitive issue. At the end of the day, it's in many ways a reflection of the value that we have for the faculty that we have in our department. And so we try to adhere very closely to the benchmarks they're basically national benchmarks. That what is the salary for an assistant professor gastroenterologist or an associate professor endocrinologist, and we work very hard to try to stick to those benchmarks, so that we don't create inequities, and that we try to take as much of the subjectivity out of it as we can.
Thank you. Any other thoughts around?
This is Diane. So thankfully for us chairs, equity, as Dr. Hirsch indicated, is built into the system. So, and that we call that a base salary. Our salary happened to be all tenure track, 19,900 funded or state funded. And, there is a mandated salary for an assistant professor step 3 or step 4. Now, we have annual salary negotiations where there's a one-on-one meeting with the chair. And there are different modes that, whether you're in the clinical series or in the research series, where you can supplement that, but that depends on whether you can, quote, afford it, whether through grant funding or clinical revenue. It could be either through a Z factor or a Y factor. But the basic fundamental X or base salary, as well as the APU, which for basic sciences is generally 1.3 across the board for all basic science departments. Those are pretty much set. It's nothing to really negotiate. What you can negotiate, at least for the faculty and basic science departments, is you can negotiate your Y, or if you do have clinical responsibilities, your Z. So junior faculty need to be aware, cognizant, and familiarize themselves with all these different avenues.
So thank you. I've heard transparency, I've heard equity, I heard things that are now more available in terms of resources and how salaries are structured and standardized. Any other suggestions or tips for early career faculty to understand, and talking with chairs around salary and best timing for that?
Well, the timing is typically early in the year. As budgets are getting set, your faculty renewal letters come out July 1, so you have to back up, several months before that. I guess 2 things I would just add. If you don't ask, you're not going to get. And so, as Kirsten said, I hired 5 faculty one year, and not all of them negotiated with me. And so, if you don't try and negotiate, you're never going to get. So just don't hesitate, but come with what, backing up why you're negotiating for a higher salary. Maybe you brought in more grant support. You're serving on certain, very important committees. You upped your teaching load, have more RVUs, whatever that might be. And then just to know, as chairs, the schools do a faculty equity analysis. Didn't do it last fall, I don't think, but we'd be getting that soon. So we have to justify any variances, so that this is really closely looked at now to ensure equitable pay by gender. It's stratified by rank, faculty series. So it's much more transparent now.
The only thing I would add is that, I always say that faculty come, you're all new faculty here at UCSF, and you got here because you know everything there is to know about some biological mechanism or some clinical context and procedure. I oftentimes am surprised, and faculty have been here a few years, and you ask them, well, do you know how your salary is paid? And faculty won't have any idea how their salary is paid. Like, do you know how sort of the department sort of thinks about salary? Do you know how you think about promotions? And even though you've gone through this wonderful faculty development day today, and hopefully you've read the handbook, this is the type of thing that you should take. This is now your career. So it behooves you to learn a little bit about how the funding works in your department, how are salaries paid, how does promotion really work? How does the department think about that? And that all that information helps you to think about like how you can advocate for something. And I think, as Lisa said, that asking for, you don't get unless you ask, and asking also can help somebody to explain to you, this is how we think of the salaries, right? And the only ways in which we increase salaries above and beyond the standard step is for people to take on these types of roles, or we don't ever do it because that's the culture in our department. And you should know that if this is your department. And so I always say you should ask.
Yeah, so at my department, family healthcare nursing, every year, whenever we have data available, we publish, when I say publish, that we put it on our school nursing, family healthcare nursing website about the principle that we used for salary setting guideline, because I really want to encourage transparency, because some people are not good at negotiating, right? Others are better. So I always talk about discussion. This is what we discuss. Based on the principle, based on availability of the funding, I look at as whole. And if we're not able to provide additional salary support, we can talk about what other support the department may be able to provide it to you. Even though we were not able to provide additional financial support, but what else that we can do to support you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Superb words of wisdom. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and there are two questions around being successful, but I'll start with this one. One faculty wanted to know, what are the top 3 things you recommend for new faculty that they may not be thinking about at the early start of their career? So if you were to look back on your career, or when you're talking to your early career faculty in your department, what are things that they're not thinking about at this stage that perhaps they should have on their radar screen in order to help them successfully move forward? And it's a little bit vague, but I think it's kind of clever in terms of, okay, what are some tips that I should be thinking about?
Oh, I think one thing that can be helpful, and none of this applies to everybody because we're all individuals and every person has their own goals and all. But one thing that I think can be really helpful in an academic career in the medical arena is to pick something that you really find interesting that you can become an expert in. And so that as your career develops, you start to become recognized as the expert in this area. And I think that is a very good way to both have an enjoyable career and also feel like you are making an important contribution.
I think that's excellent. Dr. Barber, do you have any tips for in that regard?
So, I'm pretty much towards the end of my career. So I've thought about this a lot and tried to convey. I've been very fortunate. I have had a wonderful career. It hasn't been easy. It's taken resilience. So, I wished I had better tools for resilience when I was younger. I wish I had stressed less and enjoyed more at each of my different stages. For example, when my children were young, it was like I'd beat myself up for not spending enough time with them. And then when I spent time with them, I'd beat myself up for not being in the lab enough. And I guess it's the realization that your career is going to have different stages. You know, now my children are grown and gone, and I'm enjoying grandchildren. And the architecture of my career and what it looks like and what I do on a daily basis is very different. So it's been very plastic. And I think sort of learning to accept that plasticity, as long as you are really doing the best you can't, you know, not follow through with a particular responsibility. And then the last thing, I think earlier on, I would have liked for myself to define what success meant for me. And that's, I think, really important. And as was just mentioned, you know, success is different for every person. We've got different reasons we're here. But I think defining what success is to you for your particular career path is really important for sort of working through the difficult times.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Kroon, any thoughts around this?
Yeah, just these are really wonderful comments. It's so true that I've seen some questions coming through about mental health and wellness. And
yeah, I'm going to get to those.
Yeah, we're going to get to those. Great. But, you know, for junior faculty, one thing that, you know, from an advancement perspective is, you know, when you go for your promotions, you need external letters, right? And so to start establishing those networks now, I've had faculty like, oh gosh, I'm not sure who I should ask to write my, you know, external letter. So getting involved with your professional associations so you can build those networks, serving as reviewers for your journal so you can kind of see who's who in your area and what's getting published, so that could also help establish some collaborations. So I think mainly just don't be shy and get out there and network, and not just within UCSF, but also outside.
Yeah, I'll underscore the same things as Dr. Kroon says it. And I say this as somebody who's an introvert. So it's always a lot of activation energy to do the networking. But if I think of the things that have been most gratifying, most fulfilling in terms of my career, now it is the work that I do collaboratively. It is working in part of teams with people who I love and respect, and who I think are doing impactful work. And I think, you know, the things that have been just most uplifting during this pandemic is working in a whole new area that I hadn't worked in before, with people who were really committed to doing new types of science that was going to advance some of our understanding of the pandemic. And so that's, you know, stretching a little out of my comfort zone into a new area. Because we were trying to make an impact, but that's because I knew the people around me, I respected their science, and I think those types of things, those risks that one takes sometimes to do something a little bit different because you're working with outstanding people, I think is one of those things that makes these careers really special. Yes. As well as I also had the experience of working with a team that basically has launched an area that I've worked in for a long time, but we have several investigators around the country who are sort of at similar stages in our career, thinking in like-minded ways and coming together to move a career forward. And I think that, you know, part of what we've been saying on this panel is not to sort of live in your own, you know, with both the ups and downs of your career in your own bubble. I think, you know, what makes these careers very satisfying, I think, is the types of professional interactions that we have. And I think for those who've been in it for a long time, those have really come to value.
Well, excellent. Dr. Chen?
Yeah, I think I agree with everyone that have a team of mentor, right, both within the institution, outside the institution, will be very helpful, not just for merit promotion, but for the long-term networking and learning about, you know, how do you move up the rank, as well as how do you understand, right, different practices and success stories. So I think that having a team of mentors is critical.
Thank
Marie,
you.
could I just add one other thought
Yes,
about this?
please.
You know, so a career goes through phases, and you know, as other people, Kirsten and others have pointed out, you know, there are different things that give you gratification as time goes on. And there's this adage about academic career goes through the phases of learn, earn, and return. So when you're just starting out, your job is to learn. That's what you should be doing. And then you get to the earning phase when your job is to produce, whether it be clinical RVUs or papers or grants. And eventually you get to the point where, you know, you want to return, you want to mentor others, and you want to help others be successful. And I do think one sort of message that I have to young faculty is, and I don't know, this might be a little controversial, but I think when you're early in your career, you need to be a little bit selfish when you're in the earning stage. Don't, you know, as was mentioned earlier, be careful about volunteering too much of your time to do the return part. Because if you start doing that too early, you're never going to make it as the earner. And early on, you really need to spend the time developing your becoming successful before you can do that giving back part. So, and I think sometimes people don't recognize that, or they think there's something wrong with them if they're a little too egocentric. But I think it is an important thing early on.
Thank you. That's exceptional advice. I'm taking it in as well as a senior faculty person. We have about 12, 13 minutes left, and there's a question in the chat that's come across that's real time. It has to do with self-care and self-care over the course of one career. So the question is, what strategies do you recommend for early career faculty to support their mental health and physical health over the long term, especially given the high pressure, high prestige nature of where we work? And so I think this is a very apropos way to probably end our discussion around self-care, not only in light of our work and what we do, but also what the pandemic overlaid and everything else and making everything doubly challenging and complex. I know these are kind of hard to wrap our arms around in these types of discussion, but if you could help our early career faculty to think through this as in terms of strategies.
This is Diane. I think learning strategies is a critical component. And I know as a junior faculty, you know, it wasn't that I just needed to learn and know about ways to do that. Now, one advantage at UCSF is that we do have this faculty and staff assistance program that is available for all kinds of counseling services. They offer confidential psychological counseling and consultation. And that's just one avenue. I think any kind of avenue where you can learn strategies to manage, to me, is an incredible of critical importance. Learning the strategies and then obviously applying them.
Thank you.
It really resonated with me what Dr. Barber said about the different phases in your career, recognizing that this career is very plastic. And I have to say, you know, one of the things that was very important for my career early on was, and I'm a clinician, but mostly a researcher, was to take advantage of the flexibility that comes with setting my own schedule, apart from the time that I do in clinic. And, you know, when my son had trouble in school, I basically, you know, I picked him up from school every day. I readjusted my schedule to do exactly what my family needed at that time. And that's one thing I've always actually appreciated about this job. It's something we don't oftentimes talk about, but it is something that I you know, was actually very important. I think that also the other thing I appreciate about Dr. Barber saying is that we oftentimes beat ourselves up about not being good enough on the work side and not being good enough on the life balance side. And I think we do have to find strategies to do that. One of there are a whole host of ways to do this. One of the other things that has been really important for me in my career is just having a small network of peers who I also share these tensions that we have with, and we have sort of developed other ways of thinking about how to counsel each other to rearrange what we're doing, of checking each other when things are going a little bit awry. And I think, it is those relationships, I think, that have also held me in good stead over time, and would really encourage others to think about as well, because I think the ways in which these careers can be hard is also the pressures we put in on ourselves. And so I think we have to find ways to make sure that that isn't something that we're falling victim to.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add, this past 18 months has, of course, been like none other for many, many reasons. And I think the conversation of wellness is now top of mind. And as chair, I do try and role model that, so that I think it's important that the leaders do role model the importance of this. Friday late afternoon, I have a yoga session. It's on my calendar, and I told my assistant, do not schedule over that. So I always find scheduling my wellness, whatever that might be, has really worked for me, and I suggest that for my faculty. I know we have very family-friendly policies. I know that's been a big initiative that Brian Aldridge has led for the whole campus, but really honoring that and understanding that people with children may have to leave at 4 o'clock to pick their children up from school, and that's okay, and it should be okay. We have lives, so just really not apologizing for it, and scheduling that time away. And I think role modeling has been helpful. The other piece, when I have faculty who take maternity and or paternity leave, that we are very quite generous with these. But then maybe 5 years from now, your colleague may be taking paternity leave, and now it's your time to step up because you took that leave before. So I've tried to really create that culture of support, supportive culture, knowing that, again, that there's ebbs and flows in terms of what's happening with home versus work.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I could have done a study, look at the personality characteristic of UCSF faculty, we may find some common theme. We strive for the best, right? Want to be the best. Want to be recognized as best in our field. But I also learned that it's important not to be the best. It is okay. I have to tell myself and my colleague, it is okay that the deadline you have set for yourself, that the paper should be done by the end of this month, but for some reason it couldn't get done this month. It is okay. I think having a group of people that you can count on, you can reach out to talk about those stress is critical, and having something you find relax you. Either it's meditation, yoga, like Lisa talking about, or I like to go jogging. That's how I sort of release my stress. So I think find something that you find can help you to release your stress is critical.
Dr. Hirsch, yeah, any thoughts?
Well, I wish I had the magic answer to this question. We all, I think, struggle, and somehow I think the key thing is to find balance in your life, however it is you're going to achieve that. And in some ways, we're our own worst enemies because, now with email and smartphones, it's really hard to disconnect and take time away from your work to spend time with your family, spend time with yourself, unwind. But I would urge everybody to try to do that as hard as it is. I try, for example, after the workday's over, not to look at my emails. And if I look at them, I don't answer anything unless it's really urgent. I might just look at them, but I try not to. I try to stop working at some point. Same thing with the weekends. I may look at the emails, but I don't generally respond unless it's something I have to respond to, as a way to have a little bit of time for myself and for my family and friends.
These were, I think, just amazing responses and very thoughtful, and I'm sure going to be very useful for our faculty participants. I'm not going to ask any more formal questions, but I wanted the few minutes that we have left just to give you an opportunity of things that we haven't touched upon that you think might be important or that you would like to share with our early career faculty? Any parting words of wisdom, if you will, or pearls of wisdom that we haven't touched upon? Just a few more minutes, and we have time to do that.
What I would like to emphasize that the department chair are here to support the faculty. So I think that I would love any faculty that really reach out to the department chair. Don't wait until like the burning issue is here, but just to check in, to let the chair know what's going on. Things that the chair may be able to help is critical. I think it's two-way communication. I think regular check-in with the chair, maybe something you want to think about, especially early career faculty.
Thank you, Dr. Chen.
This is Diane. I guess I would say, have the confidence, not the arrogance, but the confidence to know that you are where you are because a lot of people believe in your talents and your promise, both. And I guess a mindset not to have is some sort of adversarial, like the system's out to get you or to not, or to prevent you from getting tenure. I haven't ever experienced that for myself or, the hundreds of faculty that I've encountered across my 30-year career at UCSF. I think it's fair to say that your chair wants you to succeed and to have that kind of mindset. And just very briefly, what Kirsten talked about in terms of time flexibility, I have said over and over again, it's a fabulous career. If you're going to have a high-powered career, to me, this is one to have that's flexible with family. I drove on my kids' field trips. I went to their sporting events. Of course, I'd come home and stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning and, read and work on a grant. And I was constantly sleep deprived, but I had the flexibility to do that. And to me, that mixed with just incredible excitement that our careers offer us makes it very, very special and doable.
Mm-hmm.
I won't push further by calling.
I'll say one quick thing. Just
Sure.
I've been encouraging my faculty to please take vacation. The vacations accumulated, you may know that actually is financial hit on the book. So we like when you take vacation, you get vacation credits to your grants, which then can extend your grant life. But I've seen over the almost 2 years that just, even if it's taking a day to go to Golden Gate Park or the Botanical Garden, that we need that for wellness. So it may not be your week that you go to Europe, but just to keep please taking days, that's really important for your mental wellness.
Thank you. I think we're going to stop now. I just want to say thank you so much to our chairs, Dr. Barber, Dr. Hirsch, Dr. Chen, Dr. Bibbins-Domingo, Dr. Kroon. This has been fabulous. And I'm sure if you could see the faces of our faculty participants, they would be applauding you now and saying thank you so much. I think this was super powerful and very thoughtful and uplifting. And so I'm sure they really appreciate that. So I'll speak on our faculty behalf and say thank you very much. And on behalf of the Faculty Development Day committee and Dr. Aldridge and Dr. Glass. And so with that, I'm going to tell our faculty that we have a 15-minute break. At 2:30, you will come back and you will log into your separate breakout sessions. So you received emails with those links for the sessions that you said that you were interested in participating in. So thank you to our chair so very much and have the rest. Good afternoon. Thank you. Bye.